Hey, I just thought I never want to miss an opportunity to talk about fire prevention and what's going on up and down the state, as well as what's going on here locally. This has been a banner fire season, and for those of you who I've had conversations with, this was predicted to be a really mild fire season. And if you know, we're already up to 1 million acres that have burned, over about 6,000 brush fires. And we've lost well over 1,000 structures. Some of those are outbuildings, but a lot of people have lost homes. Your Pasadena fire has close to 300 days outside supporting on strike teams other communities in their time of need. We currently have 6 members out right now. And that's important because no matter where the incident is, no matter how big your agency, nobody has enough resources. And in our time of need, we want to make sure that if we have a fire, that we have the support. And California has the best mass mutual aid system, and all summer long you see fire engines from up and down the state supporting each other. When it comes to, right, as we're coming into, good evening, Vice Mayor Madison, I'll be quick. As we're coming into the fall with the Santa Anas, it's a really good reminder. You can go on Pasadena Fire's website and everything that we're working on with Prepared Pasadena, having adequate, clearance around your house, trees trimmed, right? Like, this is just a good reminder. We've had a couple small fires in the Arroyo, and we're really stepping up our patrols, both Pasadena Fire and Pasadena PD. But all of you, if you see something, please don't hesitate to notify. And we're out there, we work for all of you, and we just want to make sure that we can keep our community safe. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Madison.
Let me just sort of dive right in, and I appreciate our chief, Chad Augustine, for speaking up, as he always does, and the brush clearance and the other efforts are very, very important. I hope the chief mentioned, if he didn't, I want to, that we've had firefighters fighting these horrible fires from Pasadena. Where'd you go, chief? You still in the room? Sir, do we have, I know we had folks up in NorCal, and then we had folks out in San Bernardino County. Are there still our firefighters out there?
Yes, we currently have 6 members out right now, and 2 weeks ago we had as many as 15 members, mostly at the 3 fires, the airport, the bridge, and the line fire.
Yeah. So we're going to say a prayer for those men and women, and thank you very much for that contribution. Thank you. Chad would be a great fire chief if he just started working out. You know, his physical fitness is really embarrassing to me. Well, I want to, I'll give sort of a truncated version. Tonight we're going to talk about South Orange Grove, very important street and artery in our district, and great history there, and we're going to cover all of that. As I always do, though, I want to mention what we've been up to at City Hall. It's been a busy time, as always. We have an election coming up in November. Hard to believe that's almost to the point where we can say next month. But in November, we'll have obviously federal, state, and local elections. You'll remember that we moved in our local elections to the state system where the county now runs our elections. And so our municipal elections also coincide every 4 years with the state, federal, and county and other local elections. It's a mixed bag. I personally preferred when we had our own municipal elections. The argument is that it raises turnout, which clearly it does, but it also terribly dilutes the ability of all of us, frankly, to focus on the races that are here and the issues that we face locally in Pasadena. So as an example, if you probably haven't, I haven't seen my absentee ballot yet, but if any of you have, what you will see is 20 initiatives that you'll be asked to vote on. There's some number of state initiatives, some county initiatives, and then a number of local, both from the city and from the school district, are running ballot initiatives. And many of those are somewhat complex and sort of prolix to really work your way through. Obviously, you'll be getting mail if you haven't already. I know I've started getting a lot. I do want to mention the measures that the city council put on the ballot. and in particular just call out two of those, and this is not a meeting where we should be advocating on one side or the other, so I'm merely reporting to you the actions that we took and the votes that I cast. One is Measure P, I believe it's PC, which would impose term limits on the mayor and city council members in Pasadena. This is something that I was agnostic about for a long time. I said to many of us that if we had term limits of the type that are now going to be on the ballot, you would write out Mayor Bogard, much of his service. You would write out Mayor Gordo, much of his service. And you'd write out much of my service as your city council member. Obviously, on that last point, that's not for me to judge whether that would be a good or bad thing. But having said that, I was convinced at the end of the day that there was enough of a push that was really truly grassroots, community-based, to that the goals and the values of inclusiveness and opening up municipal leadership to new, fresh voices was more important perhaps than the occasional situation where you'd have someone that might be able to serve longer than 3 consecutive terms, which is what the measure would adopt. Again, this is a little complicated. It's 3 consecutive terms in any office, so you could do 3 consecutive terms as a council member in a district. You could move to another part of the city and do 3 more immediately. Or more likely, you could run for mayor and do 3 terms consecutively as mayor. It wouldn't prohibit that sort of different seat holding. But if what you were doing was the 1 seat, either the mayor or the council, you'd be limited to 3 terms. The term limits would be 3. Then you could sit out for a term and then run for 2 more consecutively. I think that last part overly complicates things, but it'll be for the voters to decide on that. And that passed very narrowly. At the end of the day, we only had 5 council members, which was the minimum that it took to put that on the ballot, and but it did pass. We also, these were all the recommendations of the Charter Reform Task Force. So we had a diverse group from across the city that met over many, many months, had a number of public meetings, and then came up with recommendations that were more or less unanimous. And I think that's notable. And so another one was campaign finance reform, to put campaign finance reform on the ballot. A couple of years ago, the state imposed on local elections the limit that the state has for sort of statewide and state legislature, those elections, which today would be $5,500. And the council decided a couple of years ago to not do anything different. Cities can adopt lower limits if they'd like. They can't go higher, but they can go lower. Many, many cities have adopted lower limits. The Charter Reform Task Force recommended that we do so as well. And on the first vote, 5 members supported that. And then when the ordinance was brought back to the council, it was 4-4. One of the members changed his vote. And so there will not be, in the short term, any campaign contribution limits. It won't change. And if you look at those filings by the incumbents, mine included, we should have full transparency in government. And I was one who pushed for the city clerk's website to have the reports that each of us is legally required to file every year in, year out, but especially when we're in a campaign mode. If you look at those carefully, pretty clear the opponents, raise dozens and dozens of contributions that are greater than the limits that we would have imposed. But be that as it may, it's not on the ballot. It's unfortunate because a majority of the council supported adopting the change by ordinance, and then the time passed to put it on the ballot, and then one of the members switched, and so now it won't be on the ballot for you to pass judgment on, and we won't be doing it as a city council, at least not right away. So that's unfortunate. The final one that I'll talk about that the council put on the ballot was the library initiative, And again, I'm not here to advocate for that, but 6 members of the council voted in favor of putting a measure to raise funds through a property tax assessment to rebuild and retrofit Central Library, which, as you know, has been closed for 3 years now because it was red tagged for earthquake safety issues. So that'll be on. There's some others that'll be on there. Like I said, there's a lot. And the most important thing, of course, is to vote, whether you do it by mail, like most of us now, or actually go to the polls in early November. Please, please do. The 710 stump is something we talk about at every one of our meetings. And, I continue to be frustrated with the lack of urgency that we're bringing to that opportunity. We've now owned the 710 stump as a city for 2 years and counting. And we don't have a development plan, we don't have a vision. The discussions have basically bogged down on a very, very important issue that has to be part of our plan and part of our vision, and that is restorative justice and making amends, if you will, for the communities, largely of disadvantaged and minority communities that were pushed aside when the freeway route was acquired by the state. Very, very important, and there needs to be a piece of this that contemplates that. But at the point now, we're really just, I think, at risk of letting this get away from us, and we need to come up with a plan, and I'm going to continue to push that we do that. And we have an ad hoc meeting of the council committee on the 710 on this Thursday, actually tomorrow. So, stay tuned on that, and let's hope, especially where, WPRA, I see some of the WPRA officers here, all of us care deeply about this parcel that's now in the middle of our neighborhoods. Final thing I'll talk about, just as our prefatory comments, are the Grants Pass decision. Many of you followed this issue, and it's probably beyond the scope of this meeting to talk fully about it, but Grants Pass was a Supreme Court case which essentially established that the cities do now, again, have discretion to enforce anti-camping and other ordinances to prevent persons from, camping, sleeping, setting up shop, if you will, in public areas like sidewalks and parks. Very controversial, and the council had a discussion about it following the decision with the analysis of the city attorney and the city manager, and basically no action was taken, which I was disappointed about. I have a 4-point plan that I'll be introducing shortly, and I'll make sure you all get a copy of it, where we can apply the new discretion that we have under Grants Pass, but we can do so in a compassionate, thoughtful way. Nobody, believe me, the city of Pasadena does not want to have a criminalization of someone because of the status of being homeless, but it's also not tenable for us to continue to have public spaces occupied by persons with a lot of the focus is on sleep, but as we all know, there are many other bodily functions that humans have to engage in beyond sleep, and there needs to be a way to balance. And my hope is that we'll find this to be a catalyst for new, thoughtful approaches, and even, hopefully more resources from the state and federal government to have solutions for those unhoused who have severe mental health and substance abuse issues and need what's called permanent supportive housing. So stay tuned on that. You'll get my 4-point plan very shortly, and I'll come back to the council and propose that we actually do something instead of what we did at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, just talk about it and then say goodnight. Okay, so I've got other things I could talk about, but I do want to get to this these presentations tonight. We're really, really delighted that we have first a brief history of the South Orange Grove and the neighborhood. Again, very, very important part of our city. And then we'll have a presentation by the Department of Transportation about what our vision is going forward for this very important artery, which many of you, I know, live either on or near, and all of us are affected by. I should have mentioned at the start, this is our quarterly sort of neighborhood town hall. Remember, we do 2 district-wide town halls each year, and then we try to do 1 in each corner, if you will, of our district, and this is the Orange Grove Town Hall. So, but we'll talk about any issue that you want to talk about. We do have some cool raffle gifts, and I'm going to supplement those with some UCLA football tickets to the game on Saturday against the Oregon Ducks. It's a night game. Obviously, those of us in the neighborhood need to be prepared for the impacts of that, but it should be a fun event, and I'll try to make up for my tardiness with some more football tickets. So why don't we bring up our first presenter, Kirk Myers, historian, who's going to speak with us about the history of South Orange Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, and good evening to all who are here. This presentation is a shortened version of one that I originally gave in December 2022 at the Pasadena Museum of History. So before I start the presentation, I'd just like to say that there are 4 basic periods of South Orange Grove history. First, since its creation in 1874, there was a period of smaller frame homes, and then in the 1890s, Millionaires Row began. And after the Great Depression in 1929, there was a period of decline, and fortunes were lost, borders were taken in, and there was a big question of where do we go from here? And that fight lasted for many years. And in May of 1948, a solution was reached, and that there was a compromise restricted residential zone. And so it allowed for the condominiums that we now see. And so that basically preserved a lot of the character of South Orange Grove. So this presentation is going to be arranged rather than chronologically, geographically, as a tour from Columbia up to Colorado. Here's an early glass slide, an image of South Orange Grove at its peak, a beautiful, majestic street with street lights, 18-foot parking, and just a sense of mystique and imagination that fired people that saw it. Broad lawns, palms, part of the whole mystique of South Orange Grove. In 1947, the Los Angeles Daily News said Orange Grove Avenue is a major Pasadena institution, the most famous and historic 10 blocks of residences in the whole western part of the United States. Views on postcards transmit that image all across the nation. And in 1916, the Los Angeles Times proclaimed, Orange Grove Avenue is today the most beautiful residence street in the world, lined with the homes of some of the country's wealthiest men and women. In Sunset Magazine in 1906, author John Dame tried to describe the beauty of South Orange Grove, and he said Orange Grove Avenue is beautiful, but of an indefinable beauty. The location of its residences, the wealth of flowers and foliage, making continuous panorama enhanced by the harmony of coloring, are more responsible for the fame of the street rather than architecture or any display of wealth. The harmony of coloring is in both the arrangement of homes and flowers, all nestling away back off the palm-bordered street, and accentuates the beauty of this much talked of thoroughfare. There are Millionaires Rows in other parts of the country, and of course the homes in Newport, Rhode Island are fabulous, the Breakers. There's nothing really to compare on South Orange Grove, but the attraction and the uniqueness of South Orange Grove is in the whole effect of the beautiful lawns, the flowers, the gardens, and the fact that it's one long street that's an exciting place to visit. Charles Ruddick Holder wrote in the Arrowhead in 1908, Orange Grove Avenue has taken on the appearance of a splendid park. And then in Sunset Magazine, another article in 1913, speaking from the standpoint of civic management, Pasadena is the most remarkable city in the country. The city is responsible for the uniform tree planting of certain of its streets. It is also responsible for the ruling that 18-foot parking of Orange Grove Avenue be kept up by Pasadena. This avenue, thanks to those whose property borders it, has underground wires and bronze lampposts that cost the trifling sum of $140 apiece. So you might think that's something not really registering right now, 1911. I just checked the Consumer Price Index. That's over $4,600 a piece, and probably considering that bronze is mostly copper, perhaps higher than that in terms of today's value. Another postcard view. Thus, Orange Grove Avenue is not noted so much for the magnificence of its mansions as for an almost reckless prodigality of ground and the wealth of verdure. Whole acres of lawn, driveways hedged with roses, and wall hanging heavy with the ivies and flowering vines of a perpetual summer. Here's a postcard that has Millionaire's Row on there. These postcards are subject to different interpretations by artists. They're basically black and white photos that have been tinted, hand tinted by individual artists. Here's a later version that's known as a linen postcard. Now here's a car that appears to me either circa 1915 or 1920 on the street. And there's an article that's written in 1952, Holiday Magazine, by Irving Stone, and he said, in 1919, when my family moved to Los Angeles from San Francisco, it was considered an interesting all-day outing to ride over in our Model T Ford to gaze in awe at the 52 adjoining mansions on Orange Grove Avenue. Now here's what's called a real photo postcard, and you know, it's the two ladies standing in the street there. No one would do that today because of the traffic, and I think there's even indication of horse droppings somewhere down on the avenue. So the cars are few and far between, so this is a different time. This is a beautiful, larger image, not a postcard, but a hand-tinted color photograph. And in 1923, the Pasadena Star-News said, Orange Grove Avenue holds a distinct place in the popular imagination. How did it start? Well, we look here at an early view of the original subdivision of land. It was made in January 1874, rather. And if you look at Orange Grove in the center, you'll notice that it's about 3 degrees inclined left for the north-south grid of Fair Oaks in Colorado. That's to incorporate 2 large live oak trees that were, one was at the intersection of California and South Orange Grove, and the other near State Street. So 2 oak trees determined the direction of South Orange Grove. Here's an early view of the oak tree at the corner, at the intersection of California and South Orange Grove. Here's a later postcard view. There's actually a wooden bench that's been constructed around there, and it was hoped that lofty philosophical discussions would take place in that area. Here's a view of the tree, that other defining tree that was near State Street, and in the distance you can see the tower of the Low Mansion. Here's an early view in 1876 of South Orange Grove, just showing some of the orchards that are beginning to take place. Here's a color postcard of that photograph. This is a view from the corner of Marengo and Pleasant Street in the lower right corner, looking west out of the West Pasadena area. Pasadena is rightly noted for its trees, and as one article said, there's probably more varieties of trees in this city than almost anywhere else in North America or perhaps the world. But this is a treeless plain largely. There's only a few native live oaks, so all of the trees that are here in this neighborhood of West Pasadena have been planted and brought in. Here's an early view, rather scruffy view of Orange Grove Avenue looking toward the California tree. We think of it in terms of the glamorous way that it has been for so long, but it didn't start out with a very glamorous look to it. It was just the main road to Los Angeles. Here's another view at the intersection of California and South Orange Grove. An early lithograph in 1886 shows what we're dealing with, the fabulous Raymond Hotel on the top of the hill there at the right corner. And then you can see that Orange Grove Avenue is basically just an avenue with a lot of orchards on either side. A close-up view in the center, we have the first large country home that was built, the Hurlbut Mansion, in 1882. This is an 1890 lithograph and shows a little bit more building taking place, but This is still just on the verge of its redefinition as Millionaires Row in the 1890s. In 1906, the Los Angeles Examiner published an article, Pasadena millionaires maintain a mile of beautiful homes. It's often referred to as a mile of millionaires. It's technically, I think, 1 1/4 mile from Colorado to Columbia. But this article is kind of almost presaging the homes of the Hollywood stars, and that they're actually showing pictures of the homes here. And there's a crude sketch here of, let's see if no, it's back. There is a crude sketch of the homes and a location of where they are on the street. There's descriptions in the article of who the wealthy landowners are and what they do. Society functions are getting into swing. This is in April of 1906. We'll look at some of these major homes that are listed. Palatial mansions and grounds along South Orange Grove Avenue are bewildering to the passerby. And this is another indication in the article of what kind of a mystique South Orange Grove had on the public that viewed it. If one goes south on the avenue, he probably exclaims at seeing each palace rising above him, "This is the most beautiful I have seen." But if the journey has begun at the other end, he gets the same bewildering impressions. Here's the crude drawing that I mentioned earlier. But people wanted to know who lives in these homes, what's going on, the social life, what's going on beyond the street. So I'll just take a brief survey of some of the homes. This is at 1204, the residence of Horace Dobbins, who was mayor of Pasadena and also constructed the cycleway. Across the street is that of the home of Lamont Harkness, the wealthiest man on the avenue, was worth $100 million when he died. And this home is not one of the biggest homes, but it was only one of his several homes, and one article noted that he had a problem spending his money. He didn't know how to spend his money at the time. One of the largest shareholders in Standard Oil. Just north of that is the Harrison T. Kendall home. A view of the early section on the west side, looking near the intersection of Columbia. This is the Italianate home of Edwin Grable. And the home of A.K. McComber. His daughter was married to Lamont V. Harkness, and the wedding gift was $1 million. But the paper said that it wasn't necessary to sustain life because Mr. Comber had his own independent fortunes. This is a common view that appears a lot. It's probably one of the best views of the three homes of the Bush, Fleming, and Lowe homes. This view is going to show up in a number of postcards and images. And here's another postcard view. The home at the left was bought by Adolphus Bush from John Cravens, and behind it are the fabulous Bush Gardens. Just to the right of it there is the Fleming house, modeled after a Swiss chalet, and to the right, the Lowe house. The Bush home was known as Ivy Wall, and ivy continued growing through the years. Back of that home was the fabulous Bush Gardens, which is another huge subject. Just north of the Bush home was the Fleming home, again, as I noted, modeled after a Swiss chalet. Mr. Fleming was a major benefactor of Caltech, donated $5 million to Caltech. The view of the Fleming home and the Bush home in the early years. And then just north of that was the fabulous home of Thaddeus S.C. Lowe, who built the Mount Lowe Railway, the 75-foot observation tower. He had a telescope in there that he can actually watch the progress of the Mount Lowe Railway from his home. See if anyone was sloughing off in the work. That was one of the most iconic homes of the avenue. The lawn is a beautiful, beautiful sloping lawn, and it's just part of the sense of the grandeur of the street. One book noted that it's actually more impressive to be driving at a moderate speed than walking, but that was, whether that was true at the time, I'll leave that to the author. Another view of South Orange Grove with the distinctive street lights and the palm trees and the Lowe house at the right. There's an early lithograph, and it shows from behind the Lowe house, right across the street is the Hurlbut house. It's a virtual forest there. To the right of that Hurlbut house, there's another house there from C.B. Sawyer. That's where the Durand house will originally be built, and that is now the site of Arlington Garden. The Durand house was one of the most fabulous homes on the avenue, modeled after a French chalet that Mr. Durand had seen and admired very much. It was supposedly called the house with gold doorknobs, but it was not solid gold. It was a gold alloy. The home is actually on a lot that is 1,000 feet. There's 600 feet to the house from South Orange Grove, and the house there is in the present location of Arlington Garden, and you can still see some of the sandstone that is incorporated, a distinct feature of the house. I like this postcard because it shows the color of the sandstone on the house, and there are fragments of that in Arlington Garden to this very day. Here's another view of the home. 17,000 square feet, was considered one of the finest homes in Southern California. Here's a Surrey with a fringe on top, as the song says. And one of the ways, of course, of getting around in early Pasadena was horse and buggy. Sometimes the horses run away. Sometimes it was a very risky occupation to take a ride in one of those. The Hurlbut House was the first large house built on the avenue in 1882. Shot here from further east shows the location of it virtually alone in the area, and again, it's a quite treeless area. View of the gardens in front of the Hurlbut House, the color postcard. Lefevre House, just north of the low house that we'd seen earlier. Another house with a large, beautiful lawn and a majestic appearance. Here's part of the description of South Orange Grove as a splendid park rings true. This is just outside the Burdett home at 891, and you can see at the far left the tower for the low house, but just a beautiful, beautiful view of the street. It's something that you can't really do justice to with the pictures because it was kind of an immersive experience, and I had the honor of talking to Leigh Leishman many years ago, and I asked him what his personal recollections of South Orange Grove were, and I asked, is it really as good as the pictures show, or is it better? And he indicated it was a lot better just being there and walking on the street. It's just something we can only partially capture with the process of photographs. Here's the garden of the Burdett house. Postcard view of the Burdett house, shown at Sunnycrest. This is a photograph that was donated to the Pasadena Museum of History by Dr. Robert Winter, and it shows a panoramic view of the street. That's the Burdett house at the upper left there, just showing the length of the lawn there and the elaborate plantings. And you can see out on the street too, not all the homes on South Orange Grove have huge setbacks. Not all of them have huge lawns. It's a very eclectic street. There's different architecture, there's different gardens, there's just an entirely different approach, and somehow it all blends together in a fabulous park-like atmosphere. This is the full view of that panoramic photo that was donated by Dr. Winter. There's a color postcard view from the front lawn of the low house or Burdett house, just showing the forest across the street that is still there from the Hurlbut residence. The F.T. Holder home at 840 is another notable home that shows up in a lot of postcards. This is a postcard view of the gardens, and just show how this is interpreted. This is hand-painted by someone that was never there. And this is the original black and white photo, and this is what colorization did. So what did it really look like? We don't know, but we just know, as someone said, they didn't live in black and white. So it helps us relate to it more, I think, when we see color images, what it looked like. This is a view of the garden of the Holder home, and then those 4 children that we saw are out in the garden here. Orange Grove Avenue is off to the left here in this particular shot. Here's another view of the Holder residence there, and then the corner of Bellefontaine is close by there. This is the Calvin Brown house. It's at the corner of Bellefontaine and South Orange Grove, and you can see that it's still a dirt road there. When did the paving take place? I found one reference that in 1906, I think it was macadamized, and another year was asphalted. There were 2 separate processes. I would just refer to it as paving, as some kind of a technical distinction that was back then, but in this photo, it's still in a dirt road. And we have on the back of the photograph at the Pasadena Museum, here's the son, Walter Brown, and his two dogs are named Toddy and Socks. There's two dogs there. Now you can see that the light pole, that the sign for South Orange Grove is white paint on wood. And because of space limitations, go back here, it actually says Belle Fountain instead of Bellefontaine, Belle Fountain. There's a U.S. Post box down below there. This is the home of Una Nixon Hopkins, and next to it is the residence of Frank Emery, an early postcard view of the street. This is a home that was belonging to another Standard Oil executive, Frank Emery. It was later moved when apartments were built in 1950. It was moved over to Green Street to house the art collection of Hewlett Merritt. This is a home by Frank Brown at 670. This is the only green and green home. The Dr. A.A. Libby home was built at 665 South Orange Grove. It's the only green and green in that space between Columbia and Colorado. Of course, the Gamble House was the green and green masterpiece, but that's technically on North Orange Grove Avenue, although it is considered in the area of Millionaires Row. The Barnum House was another fabulous house on Arbor Street here. This home was owned by Mrs. Barnum. Her first husband was J.W. Robinson of the J.W. Robinson department store fame. She was worth $15 million at the time, one of the wealthiest people on the avenue. Here's a view from Waverly Drive. Again, it's a dirt road. This home was acquired by William Wrigley, and it was torn down, and this is the current site of the Rose Garden at the Wrigley Mansion on Arbor Street. This is the home of Jabez Banbury, one of the third home built after the founding of Pasadena in 1874. Some of the early homes looked like that, and now this is the remainder of the Wrigley Mansion. Clinton P. Morehouse, a home just north of the Wrigley Mansion. And the Fenius home, original Fenius home, Moorish architecture, exotic home. It's a very, it was the precursor of the Pasadena Museum in a sense. The Fenius family lived there and established themselves in Pasadena there, and then built the home that is now the site of the Pasadena Museum of History in 1906. This home was destroyed by a fire in 1915, and it was suspected arson. Both the police department and the insurance department suspected that after it was found out that the owner had brought in 40 gallons of gasoline into the home. And it burned down, and then there was a long trial, and he proved that he was staying at Santa Monica in a hotel register, so they didn't get him. But this is another famous home on South Orange Grove Avenue. This is 150 South Orange Grove. This is actually the site that Mrs. Lucretia Garfield, widow of President Garfield, lived in 1903 and is visited by President Theodore Roosevelt as part of his Western tour. The date is May 8th, 1903, and President Roosevelt is shown here leaving the home. Now, the last part of Orange Grove has a different setup than some of the other homes. There's a hill in what is the Terrace Drive, and this is Terrace Drive in the center of the photo. This is a overhead view of the Ambassador College campus in 1970, circa. And these homes in the middle here are on the top of Terrace Drive. There's a view of the city that's quite remarkable from that site. So they're built farther back from South Orange Grove. Here's a view of the intersection of Fair Oaks and Colorado in 1883, just showing some of the orange groves that are there in the 1880s and the scope of the hill there. This is the Louis J. Merritt House, Old English style, for the father of Hewlett Merritt. This is a postcard of a whale float. In 1908, this is the most technologically advanced float. It delighted visitors. The flippers move, the mouth moves, water comes out of the spout, and also carnation perfume. How that worked, I don't know, but it was 3 tons on top of a car, and whether it was done by individuals inside or it was a mechanical contraption, I haven't been able to find from the newspaper account, but it was the hit of the 1908 Rose Parade, and this is a staging area in Del Mar. This is a view of the Claypool Mansion looking over Pasadena on Grove Street, a view of the front of the home. There's a beautiful garden which is still there which is now owned by Maranatha High School, known as the Fowler Garden. Just north of that is the Sprague Mansion. Beautiful home, English Tudor style from Otho S.A. Sprague, one of the leading grocers in the nation. And then the home of Hewlett Merritt here. And next to it, the home of Frederick Woodbury, who developed a lot of Altadena. 1970 view of the Hewlett Merritt home. And showing the Italian gardens in the back, some of the more distinctive gardens that were on the avenue. This is a view of some of the earlier homes on the avenue, Victorian homes that were later replaced by more expensive mansions. These three homes look to be in a very different world from our own, but they're actually near the El Ranch, the Ralph's Market on the Terrace Drive. The only part of Terrace Drive that's remaining is the Ralph's Market area there, from the bank from Colorado to Green Street. And the home in the middle was this is actually Howard Street. It's now known as Green Street, and we're looking west. So this beautiful home, one of the finest homes in the boulevard, was torn down in 1924. So where the critical need there, Colorado was very narrow at the time, and traffic was choked. So Green Street was extended through, and this house was removed, and Green Street was extended through to South Orange Grove in 1924. In 1929, the Colorado Street was widened, and then the traffic was dealt with. Now in 1942, here's an article on Civil War in Pasadena on Millionaires Row. This fight began actually with an organization formed in 1936. It was heating up and then was sidetracked by World War II, and the battle began in earnest after that. Many, many hours of meetings, acrimonious debate back and forth. There was no way at the time where it was going to be seen to work out equitably, but finally it did, and there was a settlement reached with an agreed upon zoning change. This is a view of the Low House. The Low House was actually one of the first torn down. It was torn down in 1929. So there was a gaping hole there for many years. Here's a view of the Fleming House by itself. Just some of these places on South Orange Grove were vacant in the 1930s and 40s. And so there's a lot of concern over what is going to happen to the future of South Orange Grove. Will it be cheaper apartment houses that change the property values of people on the adjacent streets in the entire neighborhood? How would that work out? After the zoning change, this is the first apartment building in this general area. Is built on a vacant lot. Is the Orange Grove Manor, and it's built across from the Sprague Mansion on South Orange Grove. It's still there today. So it was a chance for people that wanted to live on South Orange Grove to live in an apartment building. Now here's an article summing it up in 1969. When people come to Pasadena 40, 50, 60 years after the heyday of the Millionaires Row influence, they still ask to see South Orange Grove, and it is there for them to enjoy. It is a part of the town that has long meant much to Pasadena, visually, financially, and historically. Postcard from 1970 shows the legacy of South Orange Grove. It's still announced around the world at the beginning of the Rose Parade. It's where the Rose Parade starts, and it's where the Rose Parade turns onto Colorado. Large stands are there, and every year in January it's noted around the world. That's the end.
Let's take a couple of questions. I know many of you are anxious to hear the plan going forward, but it's such fascinating stuff. Thank you. Kirk was an archivist at the Pasadena Museum of History, recently retired, I understand, and now he'll be a regular part of all of our town hall meetings if you have treasures like that. I have one question, and then maybe you all do as well. You showed early on the trees and mentioned the trees. And by the way, there's a wonderful tape recording of the Prairie Home Companion when they filmed the show in 2003 here in Pasadena at the Civic Auditorium. And the research team did research about the Pasadena, which apparently was the practice as they moved around the country for filmings. And there's a beautiful about 12 minutes about the history of Pasadena that tracks much of what you said. If any of you would like that, I have a copy of it and I can send it out. Just let Justin Chapman know. But my understanding is there was an intentionality around a palm tree and
Magnolias?
and a magnolia.
Yeah.
Is that? Can you speak to that? Was that the intent of the
Yeah,
city founders? Use the mic, please.
Yeah, I'm not, I think Ann Scheid would be much more of an expert on this than I was, but there was an intentionality. There's a tree planting program that was developed by the city of Pasadena, and there's an article in Sunset Magazine in 1964, The Wonderful Trees of Pasadena, where it describes the tree plantings on the various streets. And Prospect Boulevard has a lot of camphor trees, and it's just noted that there are an incredible variety of trees in West Pasadena and Pasadena in general. But it was an intentional tree planting program. And as you can see, it's basically an arid plain without all those trees and without all the lawns that were planted too. So.
Okay, and then part two of my question was, how many of those homes are still there? I saw a couple, but
Yeah.
sadly, many of them were lost to history, right?
Yes, yes. The Cravens Mansion that used to be the Red Cross was built in 1930, so it's out of the kind of the general period. But the largest section of homes would be the Denham House on 297 South Orange Grove, right across from Del Mar. There's a few of the older homes that are there, and then some of the homes that remain on the former Ambassador College campus, the Lewis Merritt home, the Mayfair Mansion, what's known as Terrace Villa, an Italianate mansion, and the Hewlett Merritt House. So those homes and the ones across the street is the richest section of homes, and there are, what's unusual too, is remarkable, is that a lot of that history has still been preserved on the side streets and Grand Avenue. But Orange Grove Avenue didn't have the same history as Grand Avenue and the other adjacent streets. So, but that's basically what's left, is just a few homes here and there, and the Wallace Neff House at the corner of California and South Orange Grove too.
Great. Other questions for Kirk? Wow, you taught such a great class that everyone, thank you so much. Thank you. Pardon? We do have a question. Pardon me. Don't go too far, Kirk. Hi.
There's a question about the 18-foot parking. The city charged the homeowners for the parking, and there was a dispute on 3 of the streets in 1923, I think it was, where they balked at the cost of it, and they said that they could keep it up better with their own in-house gardeners. That happened on South Orange Grove, Terrace Drive, and I can't remember the other street right now, but it was a contentious issue after a while. I think it came to 34 cents a square foot frontage per year, but the city did maintain the parking expense and charged it back to the homeowners. And at some point, they felt that they could do a better job themselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Kirk. You mentioned the Bush Mansion too, and of course Bush Gardens, that area down below grade along the Arroyo. When I ran for council the first time, there were 5 or 6 residents that I met who were in those homes, usually as children, but they had then gone on to live in the family home, who were here for the flood of 38, I believe it was, where Bush Gardens was completely subsumed when the water came over the eastern edge of the Arroyo. So this history is good stuff. Okay, well, without further ado, thank you again very much. That was great stuff. Thank you. And we have Donson Liu and Adair Asmar here from the Transportation Department that are going to talk about our local road safety action plan, something that's always an issue for us in West Pasadena. So thank you. Can we welcome our transportation experts, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, District 6. That's a very tough presentation to follow. Hopefully you find this half as interesting as Kirk's presentation. But this will be a pretty quick presentation. So my name is Donson Liu. I'm a transportation engineer with the Department of Transportation. I'm here to talk about our local roadway safety action plan, which is our latest planning exercise to help develop, but also bring into reality a lot of our traffic safety projects that we have on the books. So what is a local roadway safety action plan, and why do you guys keep hearing about all of our plans every couple of years? Well, the local roadway safety action plan is our latest effort to update these plans. And the important thing is that even though it may seem like we're always asking for public input on various plans, we do have to update them regularly, not only just for federal guidance, but just in good practice we should. As we know, as based on the previous presentation, travel patterns change, but they also change every few years. Not just travel patterns, but the way people drive, the types of cars we drive, the types of demands that we have on our streets, and very much so the technologies that we have at our disposal to help regulate the way we drive. So the local roadway safety action plan is the latest in this series of planning exercises. Specifically, the local roadway safety action plan is what it really is a priority list of existing safety projects that we have from all our various current plans. So depending on how involved you are with how our city plans and general plans are passed, here are 4 of our latest and most current transportation-specific plans. So this one on the left is the city's capital improvement program, our latest one. The Bicycle Transportation Action Plan from 2015 is the second from left, I apologize. And second from left is our local roadway safety plan. And on the right is our Pedestrian Transportation Action Plan. All these plans were developed to address very specific different needs. The bike and the pedestrian plans are a little obvious in terms of what they address in terms of need. The capital improvement program, you may know from our general plan and how the city prioritizes all capital improvements throughout the city. The local roadway safety plan is a very data-driven document that is more of a very statistically heavy document that identifies traffic patterns and behaviors throughout the city. So why are we doing this plan now? The local roadway safety action plan, let's just cut it to LRSAP because that's what we've been calling it, is meant to address or in response to the 2022 federal infrastructure bill that provided $5 billion nationwide over the course of 5 years to help address very specific traffic safety hotspots throughout the country. So this is a national grant program, and to qualify, we have to show empirically and also from a public input point of view that we've thought about these projects and that we have a very specific way of ranking these projects to really show that we're putting our best foot forward when we bring to the U.S. Department of Transportation why we think so-and-so project should deserve federal funding. So this is just another slide that shows a very brief history of kind of how we developed this plan. We got $200,000 back in 2023 to develop this plan as part of a smaller federal grant to say, hey, for the city of Pasadena, take some of this seed money and really flesh out this plan. As you see on the right, this is a map that shows just generally where our collisions have been. I think this map shows collisions from 2014 to 2019, and this is from our local roadway safety plan. The different colors show different severities of traffic collisions. As you can see, our collisions very much coincide with our busiest streets. So where are we now in this process? We got the money last year in 2023 and awarded a contract to Fair and Peers, a well-respected local traffic consulting and analysis firm. And we're now at the point where they've crunched the numbers all summer in terms of scoring 80 of the existing projects that came from those 4 plans that we talked about previously down to 20. Where we're at is the box in the second box down, where we're ready to come out to the public, host a series of meetings to talk about these 20 projects, and also really have you guys as the public, not just District 6, but all of districts citywide, come out and tell us which ones they want us to prioritize. We'll take that input, then we'll incorporate it into our ranking analysis, develop, whittle it down to a top 15 list, and select at the, by spring, hopefully end of spring, a top 10 list that we can take to City Council, say, we've done the work, the community has agreed on these 10 projects that we want to incorporate in this plan so that we can demonstrate to, not just the Federal Department of Transportation, but any other future grantor that, these are our projects that we have really thought through, assessed, and have prioritized based on both, empirical data and also public input. So the public participation round going forward for this next month is that we will be launching a website about the second week of October, so that if you can't make the meetings, you can learn very specific details about each of these 20 projects on the website. We'll also be hosting 4 meetings during the 3rd and 4th weeks of October. We've avoided the week of Halloween, so don't worry about that. It'll be the 2 weeks before Halloween. We'll be hosting meetings at public facilities throughout the city. So it'll be at Victory Park, Villa Park, Robinson Park, and also City Hall. And we will advertise those meetings through city media channels. So be on the lookout for any emails, social media posts, things like that. And that's really where we're at with this current program. On the right, I just wanted to show this as an example of a recent project that went in that was grant funded that shows how things go from a need that was identified to a built project that really helps out the community. This is, I believe, Fair Oaks and Bellevue. Before there was no signal, as you could see crossing that stop sign on the top. I think that image is from only 2019. And at the bottom now there's a signal, so it's actually a place that you can more safely cross. With that, that's my presentation, and I saw a couple of questions. Now's the time for questions. I saw a hand here in front of me. Okay, I'll go, sir in the glasses, and then you in the front. Yes. So the question from the gentleman in the middle is, what defines a project? Did I get that right? All right. So in these 4 plans, when we develop these plans, we have specific projects. So in the capital improvement program, some projects may be as small as signalizing an intersection, and then other projects developed, like in the bike plan, may be, figuring out ways to make it safe to bike on all of Mountain Street or something like that. So this list of 20 projects is a combination of the 80 total projects that were identified here, and they were all scored based on how effective they were, how diverse they were. We have a pretty diverse set of projects citywide for this list of 20. They're all at various different price points depending on the types of grants that we're going to see. You, sir?
I couldn't agree more with you about the need for enforcement. I think we do have more than you're aware, and I'll bring statistics about that to all of you by email. And also, if you filled out a card, make sure you filled out a card and we have a way to reach you. I proposed in this last budget cycle, as I do pretty much every budget cycle, more motor officers. Not a single colleague of mine on the city council supported that request. And so we stay at the same metrics. Now, we still have 10 or 12 motor officers, and they are in our neighborhoods, I guarantee you. I see them, and usually what happens when we increase enforcement is a similar group of neighbors complains that it's not us that's supposed to get the citations, it's the people from out of town who are coming through. But I don't mean to make light of your comment, and there's nothing more important that you should expect from your city than public safety. And this issue of speeding along Orange Grove is real. We know it is. It's also on St. John and on Pasadena Avenue. And going back to the 710 project, another reason that we need to get going on that is we will have significant dollars to do transportation projects to have new solutions that hopefully will take traffic out of our neighborhoods and direct it onto more business-like arteries where they belong. So, absolutely. And but I need you to let the mayor know about this. I need you to come to the city council meeting, and if we need to do a better job of preparing you for that, we will. I would offer to each of you to get involved in your neighborhood association, WPRA, principally would be, I think Singer Park also, because the council will listen when you show up and let them know that the people that voted them in and can vote them out want that, but you are speaking my language, believe me. So, yes, sir. And I don't know if your question's for transportation staff. I do have the other staffers here to amplify on Donson, but it sounds like the conversation may be moving more in this direction. We'll go wherever you'd like to go. Yes, sir, you.
This year I've made 9/11 calls. One of them a fatality for accidents that happen at the intersection. One of them where a car drove at 120 miles an hour into the Howells house, which was the fatality. I know most of your excellent officers, police officers, by their first names, and they know me by my first name because I am known as the first responder, a very reluctant title because I live right there, and I'm usually the first on the scene. Last night at 2:30 a.m., I was using my garden hose to wash blood off the street from the last accident, which happened last night, which I have photographs of, which took out one of your infrared cameras, and the guy ran off and got on the freeway long before the police arrived, even though they were very prompt. I'm sick and tired of it. 3 weeks ago, a car drove at 100 miles an hour into our front garden and stopped 5 feet from my daughter's bedroom. She refuses to sleep in there anymore. And this was at 2:30 in the morning. They were drunk. They left a trail of blood along the street as they tried to get to the hospital. I've had to pull people out of cars. I carry a safety kit by the front door with flashlights and seatbelt cutting equipment and flashing lights to stop people, to stop them from driving into the back of the road accidents. It goes on and on and on because at midnight, the stop signals turn to flashing red signals, which everyone ignores. They go straight through them. They have no idea that the road going down to the 110 is a slalom of fun. So they go straight over the center divider into whatever's coming the other way. And there are no signs. So I've gone out on Amazon and I bought my own signs. And I put my own sharp turn signs and I've installed them myself. And I'm going to buy another 10 and I'm going to put them in. And if the city want to pull them out, I'm going to have KTLA come and film them pull them out because I'm sick and tired of it because every morning, my daughter is an alum of this school for 6 years. Every morning and every afternoon.
I was just checking, we do have cameras at that intersection. We don't have red light cameras like this gentleman from Cravens Court mentioned. I believe the courts in California invalidated that as an enforcement mechanism.
I think they revalidated it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just basically bolting the stable door because the people are already dead or injured by that time.
Yeah.
You can prove who did it, but it's too late. They're already dead or injured. Every morning, every evening, there are girls from this school who walk up and down that road in 2s and 5s and 10s. How long will the city be prepared? This is all very pretty and very nice and whatever, but I mean, how long is it going to take before, heaven forbid, a husband and wife walking their dog or a group of Westridge girls are plowed into by some guy in a Dodge Charger doing 90 miles an hour through those red lights? And you're going to have national headlines national headlines, and there's going to be a paper trail of inaction or an absence of a paper trail of action on that exact spot. And all it takes, you're talking about vying for $5 billion nationally, which will probably happen in 2027 or 29 or whatever. All it would take is some $50 signs. $50 is what I paid for that sign. I can spend $500, get 10 more. Pardon? I'm sorry. Some signage.
What would the sign say? Sorry.
S-curve ahead.
Oh.
Sharp turn ahead. Cameras, speed cameras ahead.
Well, we'll take up the issue of red light cameras. I want to confirm the legality of that, because I know we had them throughout the city and they were invalidated by the courts. Is not.
Well, when I spoke to the chief of police at the last meeting, he gave me permission to put up a 8K high definition camera on my front lawn, so that I can film the intersection myself.
Yeah. Well, again,
why
we have
should
cameras.
I have to do that?
We have cameras on that intersection, as we do throughout the city, to monitor traffic patterns and the signalization. That particular intersection is difficult because we don't own all of it. It's shared with the city of South Pasadena, but we can reach out to them as well. But I think this does bring back, if the priority for you and the group is more police officers, because that's what we would need. But
that doesn't, unless they're actually all waiting all night at each intersection, that's still not going to stop the accidents. The accidents have to be, action has to be preemptive, not post follow-up with who did
I will
what.
tell you respectfully that the guy who's going 100 miles an hour and who's drunk is not going to be impacted by a sign that says S. Maybe some of the drivers would be, you're right, and we can take that back and look at other solutions. We've looked at any number of traffic calming solutions is the term. Sometimes there are detriments to those as well as benefits, and it's a complex problem of human behavior. And I think at the end of the day, there just needs to be stronger enforcement, and certainly if technology can do that, that should be part of it as well. But I want to make sure everybody gets their chance to weigh in. The staff is going to check on the signage again. We might need permission for South Pass, because I think the S really begins on their city, but we have good relations with South Pass. They just bought a bunch of Tesla police cars, you may have seen. They're upside down on their budget, but they've got brand new Tesla police cars. But we do have good relationships with them. Yeah, the Measure R is the county sales tax initiative that provides dollars for transportation projects. And as a result of the 710 and the result of the rejection of moving the Metro line at grade, above or below grade, which we contemplated for a long time for good reasons, we now have access to Measure R dollars, and we will have more access to those if we get our way. So I absolutely agree with the lady that indicated it's a multimodal approach, no question. I will say there does come a point at which the resources are not unlimited, and that was sort of why I asked if our strong desire is to have more officers. I do want to mention we are down probably 40 officers from the high point. And of course, our population hasn't gone down. The complexity of the public safety issues hasn't reduced, it's increased, and so forth and so on. But we live in a time where policing is viewed differently from the way it always has been. And it's by no means an easy thing to get 5 members of the city council to support reinstatement of the full sworn, what we call sworn peace officers, more motor officers, more patrol officers, more police presence, which is what a lot of you are discussing. So, that's great to hear. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, in the the back. Yes, you're the last person from me. Thank you. So there is a number of people in our city who believe that we need to move with climate change and the desire to become a more, or I guess a less automobile reliant community, that we need to move to greater walkability, greater bikeability. You've seen some of those projects pop up. By my lights, they're not tremendously successful. Union comes to mind, for example, where now you sort of have a hodgepodge of bike lanes and then a handful of cars parking pretty much in the middle of the street, and then slimmer, the whole, diet metaphor is to make the road skinnier. There again, that's not an easy debate, but we certainly don't have a groundswell of support on the council to build more of those. I think there will always continue to be those discussions, and these are not unreasonable viewpoints in terms of the health and safety of the community. So, yes, sir. Well, and it's kind of akin to speed bumps, which I know often our office will receive a complaint about traffic and a request for speed bumps. There's a process to do that. Not everyone who's gotten speed bumps is glad they did, because of the same issues that you're describing. If there's someone that needs to have 140 decibels on their car stereo, speed bumps slow that and lengthen the experience of the sleeping neighbors. Some people simply ignore speed bumps. There's an urban myth that if you go any exponent of the speed limit over a speed bump, you won't feel it, basically. So, I don't know if that's true. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So these are important, complicated decisions. And as we tackle the 710, this is going to be one of the main pillars, I hope, of our vision and our development, is how do we address the transportation needs that are going to remain behind even as we hopefully build out that 50-acre parcel. So other questions for me or for transportation staff? Yes, sir. Let me repeat your question and respond to that one, and then I'll ask you to continue, please. So the question's about sirens, police, and mostly fire, I would imagine. Maybe sometimes police, but mostly fire. I will tell you, as someone who does ride-alongs with the fire department, it's kind of the other side of this coin that we're talking about, of the sort of clueless drivers who are driving too fast, have the radio up, are looking at their phone, or worse. And when you're with those firefighters, literally every single call that occurs during a high traffic area time, at least, is, what most of us in this room, I think, will remember an e-ticket at Disneyland. Remember the most, thrilling, terrifying experience, because people just plow right through the intersections, even though there's a fire. So I think I'm going to have a hard time convincing the chief that we can do less of that. I will ask that they be mindful of it, that they continue to be mindful of the neighbors, and if they don't need to be lights and sirens, there'll probably always be lights for the fire department, but if they can avoid that. So I want you to continue though, sir. So many of these issues overlap. Obviously the public safety piece, but you mentioned public transportation. We have a great light rail that pretty much most of us won't use because it's just not safe. I mean, the number of public safety problems that come out of that, what we used to call the Gold Line is now called the A Line, is unfathomable. And it's largely this issue that we talked about in the preface. It's unhoused persons who have severe acute mental health and substance abuse issues. I mean, we've had homicides. I was at the CVS on South Arroyo and was 5 feet away from an armed robbery that took place. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in that situation. I was a prosecutor for many years. I never had been. And it's true. Everything goes into slow motion when that gun is being waved around and pointed. And that was a person who was on that rail, and the sheriffs either booted him off or he just chose to get off there. And one of my proposals is that the Pasadena Police Department, with enhanced personnel and a budget from Metro, should assume the responsibility for public safety on that rail in Pasadena. That's what LA does. That's what Long Beach does. That's what we should do too, because those problems aren't problems, sort of specific to the rail. It affects our community, and gravely so. I mentioned the elections also. We have a district attorney who, near as I can tell, doesn't want to prosecute cases. And I believe strongly in redemption and rehabilitation and effective engagement with the criminal justice system as a positive thing. But he has gone far, far beyond. So again, please, whether you support that district attorney or oppose him, vote for DA. It's very, very important to all these issues. I'd be curious from our staff if you have the data on this. My sense is we were way down during COVID, and now I'm not sure traffic's worse. We have traffic counts that would inform us at least partially. But is traffic worse now than it was pre-COVID? It's certainly worse than it was during the pandemic, but I wonder if you could speak to that and introduce yourself, please. Sure. Yes, there's several questions and we'll get to all of them, I promise.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nader Asmar. I'm a principal engineer with the City of Pasadena DOT. Dawson is part of my team as well. So there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention. One of them is that as far as the traffic patterns in the city that the councilman mentioned, we did see a huge dip in traffic, obviously, during the pandemic. The traffic volumes have pretty much gone back to normal now for maybe a couple of years, about 80 or 85 to 90% based on our assessment of the traffic volumes in the city. We also track, fatalities, how many people are killed on our streets, because our goal is through this local roadway safety plan is to have 0 traffic fatalities in the city. That's the goal. So we spend a lot of time on traffic safety. The things that you say are I'm listening very intently because I want to learn. And there's a couple of other efforts that we're working on that kind of in line with what you said about messaging. Dawson could probably speak to this a little bit better than me, but we do have a safety campaign that's a citywide campaign that the council actually gave us money 2 years ago to begin a citywide campaign, social media campaign and billboards and on the bus stops and such to message people the dangers of not paying attention, driving too fast. The issues you mentioned about people not paying attention when they enter the roadway. And that's going to be an annual campaign that we follow every year to try to push that out to people so that they're aware of the dangers of the roadways. It's very dangerous, and our goal is to really calm traffic without impeding traffic as much as we can, but it's a balancing act. It's very difficult with the amount of cars that we have in the city and the way, one thing we did notice after the pandemic is people are going faster. Cars, it's a national issue where there's a lot more reckless driving and there's a lot more speeding. And, the speed cameras that you mentioned, they're not allowed in California right now, but there is a pilot program, as you mentioned, for those 5 cities, but we've already signed up to be next in line when that pilot program is completed, because we know that those work. So that's another thing that we're doing. I don't know if that answers.
The signs that show the speed you're driving versus, right, yeah. Good. Great, thank you, Len. You've had your hand up for a while there, yes.
Thank you. Just to address the drunk drivers late at night, besides regular enforcement of the speed during the day, which is absolutely ridiculous, is why not also combine that with periodic DUI checkpoints? If people know that Orange Grove Boulevard is going to be heavily enforced with DUI checkpoints, they're not going to be so inclined to come off of the 110 freeway and go up that probably not noticeable street. They'll go to wherever. They shouldn't be drinking and driving to begin with, but let them get caught at Arroyo Parkway. So I think that it's not only regular enforcement during heavy traffic hours, but also at night. I have no problem with a DUI checkpoint. I'd rather have them start to slow down the traffic and have people absolutely avoid South Orange Grove Boulevard.
Well, I certainly agree about DUI checkpoints, and here's how bad it is. We do them, and when we do, we publicize them broadly, and they still have more arrests than they can account for. Now, obviously, a lot of people aren't following the media, the news, or what have you, but they're also resource intensive. It takes a lot of officers to operate a DUI checkpoint, officers that some would argue are needed when we have kids shooting each other in other parts of our city. Again, I think a big solution is to get back to full strength at our police department and then have the more flexibility. But your points are very, very well taken. There's
Well,
no question.
understood, but I've lived on Orange Grove for 4 years now, and I have never seen a DUI checkpoint, ever. So, yes, you do have to announce them and do all that stuff, but I think maybe it's time right now to be able to start maybe concentrating a little bit more
I
on
know
South
the
Orange Grove.
DUI checkpoints tend to be in areas where the freeway's proximate. That would certainly, South Orange Grove would check that box for sure. I know they also need room to operate the checkpoint. And again, it's not just one officer, like this. You've got, essentially a transport vehicle, a paddy wagon. You've got additional officers to provide security, officer safety, and to be able to handle anyone that needs to be detained. But that's a great solution, and I'll bring it up with the chief. Thank you. Okay, other questions? Or yes, in the very back, maybe just take a couple more, and then we'll do our raffle. And remember, you have to be here to win. So, yes.
I've heard of cities that introduce the old-fashioned cobblestones, which vibrate the car throughout the whole street, which then slows that person down. And it's in some very, I read some place in Florida has introduced it. I'd like to know the city's point of view of, does that work? Have they looked into it?
Yeah, I'll ask staff to respond, although I will say what the state uses are called bots dots. They're those reflective dots that you see, for example, coming off a freeway or along what's called the gore point, to make sure that if you're straying out of your safe lane, it'll do the but. One thing would be whether there's ambient noise that's created from those for the neighbors that are living, proximate to the roadway. But what's your take on that?
So the paving of the roads is actually completed by the Public Works Department, and I'd have to kind of talk to them, but I know from my experience that we probably would not, they would not be paving a street with cobblestones just for the sake of calming traffic. I know that, departments of transportation in the past have used, bots dots, as the councilman mentioned. Things called rumble strips were very common back in the 70s, but they were all kind of removed because of the noise that they generate. Residents complain it's too loud. So there are other traffic calming measures that we can implement that can solve the same issue, but without necessarily cobblestones or rumble strips. We can always look at other measures, but I don't believe that cobblestones are something that the city would implement. But I could refer you to somebody from Public Works. We could ask that question.
Okay, I saw two hands in the back, but was that the one question or no? Okay.
No, I had a question.
Yes, please.
Actually, two. You mentioned the money that the city had received for the crossing of the light rail at California.
Yes, but for there was a significant project in the Measure R budget, if you will, to take the light rail at California, the crossing there, and either make it above grade or below grade to help improve the flow of traffic there. That project was basically killed, And that opened up money that could be redeployed into 9 or 12 other projects that we have on our capital improvement budget.
Okay, so my question is, what does the city plan to do to remedy the mess that is the crossing of the light rail at California?
Well, there we have a signalization program that's designed at least to try to work the crossings into the normal signalization. I know I'm frustrated with it, so I can imagine that you are too. I don't know if you want to speak to whether there's room for improvement for that. It certainly seems like there is.
One of those projects that came out of that money is like a light rail signal tracking system that would communicate more closely with Metro's trains, would give us like more advanced notice that the trains are coming and which direction, and sometimes they come like in such a manner that the gates are down a little bit longer than other times. So it's really an attempt to kind of predict what's coming in advance and then adjust the signal timing so that more cars can get through the intersection, and also being able to count the pedestrians and all the modes at that intersection, especially like intersections around Arroyo, Del Mar, and Arroyo, California. Those are the ones that we're going to be implementing this new system using some of the money that we got from the California Grade Crossing.
Okay.
It could always be better, but it's it's very dynamic, and the traffic signal systems that we have there are in such a way that they actually change as the traffic patterns change. But it could always be better, yeah.
In my objection, in part, is that some of that money that would have been used to remedy a significant problem that the city chose not to use is being used to tear up my neighborhood and create traffic issues in my neighborhood. And it was something that no one in my neighborhood was ever consulted about. And I just think that it's a very poor use of money. It's a waste of funds.
Well, obviously, if the traffic volumes remain the same, traffic management is a bit of a zero-sum game, right? If we redirect traffic from one area, it will end up in others. My thing is, we should be pushing it away from the residential neighborhoods into the central part of the city. I think Raymond, for example, continues to be an open secret that we could do a much better job of having traffic, north-south traffic using Raymond to come down and get on the 110 at Dayton, rather than coming to South Orange Grove. With the crossing, well, yes, as was described, the signalization project does that, yes. I hear you. That's not exactly the process. It wasn't given and then taken away. It was budgeted, but pending further approval and development and completion of the budget. And at the end of the day, that project didn't make the cut, but other projects that will benefit Pasadena did. So let us know if you want to continue that conversation. We'll do one more question because I don't want to lose people before the raffle. Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Sarah Halpin. You
Hi,
spoke
Sarah.
to the plans that are going to be coming out. Can you say if any of them affect South Orange Grove, and specifically if they redirect some of the traffic coming off of the end of the 710 that would normally go down St. John's onto Orange Grove?
Yes, that's my goal for this project, is to redirect the south-going traffic that's now using the stump and then coming into our neighborhoods, to redirect that more to the city, to the central part of the city, Marengo.
But not to Orange Grove?
Raymond, not to Orange Grove, no.
Okay.
I would love to see Orange Grove, St. John, and Pasadena return to the residential streets that they originally were, and that Kirk so brilliantly demonstrated for us here. So I want to give a shout out to Westridge School and to KPAS for being here, as they always do. Thank you so much.